Hello! Today we are visiting Versailles Palace. Château de Versailles is one of the most famous landmarks and is definitely one of the largest and most beautiful palaces in the world. The garden is huge. It's about 8 square kilometers and is more than 1,000 football fields. In the palace, there are 2,300 rooms spread over 63,000 square meters, and I will show and explain you the most beautiful and important ones. Every year, 10 to 15 million tourists visit Versailles, so it's one of the most visited historic sites in the world. Château de Versailles is known for its grandeur and historical significance. It's a former royal residence and is located about 20 kilometers away from Paris. It takes around 40-50 minutes from Paris to reach the chateau. It was first built by the King Louis XIV as a hunting lodge in 1623. Versailles at that time was a very small village in a wooded wetland. His son, King Louis XIV, also known as the Sun King, transformed and expanded it into a magnificent royal palace. We see the signs of the Sun King many times in the palace. In 1682, Louis XIV moved the French court and government to Versailles, making it the political and cultural center of France. The palace was key to Louis XIV's politics, where the royal power is centralized. It was also an expression and concentration of French art and culture. Versailles became a symbol of absolute monarchy and prosperity. Extravagant balls, operas, and political events in the palace dominated France. Louis XIV died at Versailles in 1715. He was King of France for more than 72 years. It is the longest of any sovereign. During the French Revolution, King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette were forced to leave Versailles and move to Paris. The palace was ceased to be a royal residence and was partially emptied, with many furnishings sold. In 1837, King Louis-Philippe converted Versailles into a museum dedicated to the glories of France. It has since then been restored and preserved as a national monument. This is the Royal Chapelle. It had a full restoration of 4 years. This was originally a chapelle. It was rebuilt, and the painting on the ceiling gave the room its name. The painting Meal at the House of Simon by Paolo Veronese was a gift to Louis XIV from the Republic of Venice in 1664. This is the Salon of Abundance. It was the antechamber to the Cabinet of Curios. Louis XIV's collection of precious jewels and rare objects are displayed in this room. When the king and queen held their evening soirees, they would use this room for refreshments. Louis XVI used this room as a game room. We are in the Salon of Venus. On the ceiling, the painting in the gilded oval frame depicts Venus dominating her powers to other gods of mythology. The principal feature in this room is the life-size statue of Louis XIV in Roman emperor costume. This salon was used for serving light meals during evening receptions. The paintings and sculpture around the ceiling illustrate mythological themes. The Salon of Mars was used by the Loyal Guards, so it was decorated on a military theme with helmets and trophies. It was turned into a concert room with galleries for musicians on either side. Portraits of Louis XV and his queen decorate the room today. The next room is the Salon of Mercury. It was the original bedroom when Louis XIV officially moved the court and government to the palace. The bed is a replica of the original one. The ceiling paintings depict the god Mercury and Alexander the Great and Ptolemy surrounded by scholars and philosophers. We are in the Salon of Apollo. It also has a symbolic importance. Apollo was the god of the sun, arts, and peace. Louis XIV's nickname, the Sun King, is derived from this god. The Apollo Salon served as a throne room and housed a huge solid silver throne. But the throne and some other silver furnitures were melted down in order to pay for costly wars. The painting on the ceiling depicts the sun chariot of Apollo pulled by 4 horses and surrounded by the 4 seasons. Above the fireplace hangs a portrait of Louis XIV in a royal suit, wearing the insignia given to the kings on the day of their coronation. This one is a copy, and the original one is at the Louvre Museum. On the opposite wall, we see a portrait of King Louis XVI. The War Room. This room pays tribute to the military victories of Louis XIV. He is on his horseback trampling his enemies. This is an entrance room to the Hall of Mirrors. We are in the magnificent Hall of Mirrors. This hall is the most famous feature of the palace. At first, it was a terrace with a beautiful view, but later on, it was transformed to a hall. The Hall of Mirrors is 73 meters long. It pays tribute to political, economic, and artistic success of France. The political success is illustrated through the 30 painted compositions on the ceiling. They mainly describe the victorious history of Louis XIV. The economic success is exhibited by the 357 mirrors on the walls. It means that France could rival the Venetian monopoly on the mirror manufacturing. At that time, such items were a great luxury. It is very interesting that the Second German Empire was proclaimed in the Hall of Mirrors, after the German siege of Paris at the conclusion of the Franco-Prussian War. Versailles was chosen because it was the headquarters of the United German Armies. The Hall of Mirrors was chosen because its ceiling paintings glorified the conquest of German territories by France. A few decades later, the Treaty of Versailles was signed in the Hall of Mirrors. That officially ended the First World War and also dismantled the German Empire in the same room where it had been proclaimed. This is the king's bedroom. The king had a direct access to the Hall of Mirrors from his bedroom. This room was a drawing room before Louis XIV transformed it into his own bedroom in 1701. He died in this room in 1715. Both Louis XV and Louis XVI continued to use their bedroom for their official awakening and going to bed. As in all royal residences, the king's apartment contained the customary succession of rooms: a guard room, 2 antechambres, a chambre, and a cabinet. This room was originally divided into 2 by a partition wall. Frustrated by the small size of these rooms, Louis XIV decided to knock down the wall in 1701 and combine the 2 rooms into one. The Peace Room is symmetrical to the War Room and contains the same type of decorations on the themes of the benefits of peace brought to Europe by France. From time to time, the room was separated from Hall of Mirrors with a partition wall. During the reign of Louis XV, every Sunday, the Queen gave concerts of religious or secular music, which were continued by Marie Antoinette during the subsequent reign. The bedchamber is the most important room in the apartment and is where the Queen spent most of her time. This was where she slept, often with the king, and in the morning she received guests here. It was also here that the Queen gave birth. 19 princes and princesses were born and 2 queens died here. The Queen's apartments and the King's apartments were laid out on the same design, each suite having their same number of rooms. Both suites had ceilings painted with scenes from mythology. The King's ceilings featured male figures, the Queen's featured females. The Queen's Guard room is where 12 of the Queen's guards were on duty. It was also here that a group of rioters tried to enter the Queen's apartment during French Revolution. The Queen managed to escape. This led to the grand departure of the King and his family, a key event in the French Revolution. In 1833, this room was named as Coronation Room. It has been devoted to the glory of Napoleon Bonaparte. The greatest paintings on his reign is displayed in this room, which could not be placed anywhere else in the palace. We see the 2 immense paintings by Jacques-Louis David to commemorate the ceremonies celebrating Napoleon's crowning as Emperor of the French, the coronation, and the distribution of the Eagle Standards. We also see Battle of Abukir, commissioned by the Emperor's brother-in-law when he was King of Naples. There are portraits between the windows: General Bonaparte in Italy and Napoleon I, Emperor of the French, by Alexandre Dufay, known as Casanova. On the ceiling, painting also called as Francais, symbolizing Napoleon Bonaparte's seizure of power. In the center of the room stands the column from the German campaign, also called the Austerlitz column. The Gallery of the Great Battles is the largest room in the palace, 120 meters long and 13 meters wide. Shortly after becoming king in 1830, Louis-Philippe decided to transform Château de Versailles into a museum devoted to all the glories of France, with paintings and sculptures of famous French victories and heroes. The museum opened in 1837. Hall of Battles is the most famous hall of the museum. Louis-Philippe was overthrown, so the museum project was stopped, but the paintings of French heroes and great battles continued to be exhibited. 33 paintings are exhibited here, depicting the greatest battles that had influenced the history of France. After the palace, we will now visit Château de Versailles Gardens. The garden is huge. It is about 8 square kilometers. That is more than 1,000 football fields. Can you imagine? You need to walk around 2 kilometers from the palace to the Grand Trianon and 1 kilometer from Grand Trianon to Queen's Hamlet. The gardens represent French formal garden style, perfected by André Lenôtre in these gardens. It is decorated by more than 50 fountains and more than 200 statues distributed all over the land. At the foot of the palace, on the garden side, there are 2 large rectangular pools. They reflect the sun's rays and light up the outside wall of the Hall of Mirrors. Around them, statues of mythological figures symbolize the rivers of France. Standing on the terrace on the palace, we can see Latone Fountain and then the Grand Canal stretching as far as the eye can see. The statues of Latone Fountain depicted an episode from Ovid's Metamorphose. The link between Ovid's story and an episode from French history is emphasized by the reference to mudslinging in a political context. Further along the axis, we reach the Apollo fountain. We see the sun god driving his chariot to light the sky. The fountain forms a focal point in the garden and serves as a transitional element between the gardens and the Grand Canal. After walking about 2 kilometers in the garden, we are in front of the Petit Trianon. It was commissioned by Louis XIV in 1670 to get away from the arduous pomp of life in the court and to pursue his affair with Madame de Montespan. This was a place where he and invited guests could spend time away from the strict labels of the royal life. This is the Empress Bedroom. It is Empress Marie Louise who selected the furniture, so you can see here today. The only exception is the bed, which was in Napoleon's bedroom in the Tuileries Palace. In the earliest days, this room was a chapelle. It was converted into an antechamber but retained its original purpose. Opening on the courtyard on one side and the gardens on the other, the peristyle is a sheltered colonnade connecting the two wings of the Grand Trianon. This room was formerly the antechamber to Louis XIV's apartments, used to host the king's suppers. Napoleon made this room the officers' lounge, while Louis-Philippe converted it into a billiard room. Louis-Philippe created this spacious lounge by combining two existing rooms. The king and his family were fond of the Grand Trianon, where they would spend their evenings together in this comfortable lounge furnished in the contemporary style. Napoleon used this large space to house the Malachite sculptures presented to him as a gift by Tsar Alexander I. Alexander I was the Tsar of Russia. His territorial ambitions brought him into conflict with Napoleon on several occasions. This is the cool room. Because it faces north, it served as Napoleon's council chamber, and it was here that Charles X took leave of his ministers on 31st of July 1830. The side walls are adorned with 4 views of Versailles. We see the emperor's map room. In 1810, Napoleon decided to establish a map room here, turning the neighboring room into a private chamber. This gallery is positioned to shelter the Trianon's flower beds from the worst of the winter weather. There are 24 paintings of Jean Cocteau depicting the forest of Versailles and Le Trianon. The artist's name is given to the gallery. This vestibule, named as the Round Room, served as the entrance to Louis XIV's first suite of apartments in the Trianon Palace. The columns, along with the marble floor slabs and the paintings on the walls, all survive from his original incarnation. This is the Petit Trianon. Louis XV and his new mistress, the Comtesse de Berry, found the privacy they needed at this new residence. More than just a gateway, this place reflected the king's deep love of botany. Louis XVI gifted the Petit Trianon to Marie Antoinette, who had difficulty adjusting to life in the palace. She quickly grew attached to the estate, making it her own private retreat. And this is the Queen's Hamlet. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.